When I came on, there was no consequence. They can call me a B word, they can call me all kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
the sergeant would just keep on doing briefing like he didn't hear what was happening.
Yeah.
And she was the niece of one of my officers when I was a captain, and he was murdered, shot, and killed in the line of duty early morning hours after a holiday weekend. And
Welcome back to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. Here with another special guest. We're going all the way to the Bay Area. I was told that it's just as cold over there as it is here. And a heavy hitter, what I would consider a professor, public speaker, consultant, and author. We'll talk a little bit about the book. But more important than anything, let's get Dr. Jonni Reddick on the, let's go. Your Code 6, Johnny, would that be the best way to describe? Or, because you're a doctor, you're also an assistant chief, and I got to call you Chief Reddick, but I'm sure that you've been retired long enough for people just to call you Johnny. Would that be true and accurate?
that would be true and accurate. And but there are, there's things in our profession where no matter how distanced I am, when people see me, hey chief, how's it
Yeah.
doing, chief? Happy holidays, chief. They forget that I have a first name. So I really do like my first name being used actually. So yeah, absolutely.
Did at some point when you retired and you got your doctorate, did they call you doctor as well?
I do have that occasionally because that's relatively new. I'm a continual learner.
Okay.
So, when I was coming up as a kid, education wasn't necessarily something that was a priority. I mean, I was raised by a single mother. She had depression and, you know, prescription medication, drug issues, even though she was a registered nurse. So just surviving was our mentality. Most of the time, we were very transient as I moved around when we were younger, and so graduating high school was like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I didn't go back for, junior college for my AA till I had both my kids working graveyards. And then I didn't get my 4-year degree until they were a little bit older and I was moving into management. And I didn't get my master's until I was getting ready to retire. And then my doctoral came after that. So it's new space, but I love that ability to be able to continue to just learn and grow and be able to actually apply it as still a practitioner in different spaces.
Yeah, no, totally. I can 100% relate with you with single parent, struggling mom, moving around. Uh, it's it seems as though it's a journey that I'm starting to realize that it's amongst a lot of people that I know. And here we are. We persevere and we continue our education. I'm right along with you. It took me close to 20 plus years to end up getting my law degree. So I can relate with you. But I was a high school dropout, so I ended up getting my GED and my diploma about 7 or 8 years later. So, but
That's awesome.
we can say that journey for another day, because what I really would like to know is here you are. You and I have been kind of going back and forth on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you saw this internal affairs uh, logo or emblem, if you will. And you and I can agree that it's a very taboo type of topic. We don't discuss it as much. And so I wanted to know, back when you came on the job, let's just say late 80s, right? You tell me, what impression did you get of internal affairs, if any?
Yeah, so late 80s, I came on in 88. And I think for me, I didn't understand or know anything about what internal affairs was because I wasn't often in trouble or saw people in trouble in those first several years of my career. But the first time that I did get in trouble, it was through a citizen's complaint.
Okay.
And I didn't understand the process for the citizens complaint process. I probably had 6 or 7 years on, but again, I hadn't been in any kind of trouble, wasn't around people, or I didn't pay attention. I wasn't very, you're a young person. I came on at 21. So I
Yeah.
was all about me, self, self, self. So I wasn't really cognizant of everything else that was going on around me. But that first experience being in a internal investigation through that citizen's complaint left me very bitter. For one, again, I'm going to use my lens for people. I was a
Please.
female. Um, there was not very many women on in my area that I worked when I got this. I think there was three of us. One was pregnant. One was a state police. We had just absorbed them in '95, so they didn't really understand how to do the role of the highway patrol yet. So we had one person there that was always in trouble doing something that she shouldn't have been doing. And then I came and transferred into this office. And because we were women and we had children, we connected. So we went and did a couple of things off duty. So this was an off duty citizen's complaint where they created a nexus to the department because she got into an argument as we were checking out of wherever the store we were at. And she got into an argument with them about customer service and what the expectation would be like if, for us on the highway patrol, if we had handled or talked to people the way that they were. Well, they called to complain about us. And the nexus was because she mentioned that we worked for the California Highway Patrol. But none of that came up. This is all what I discovered later because my part of that internal investigation process was I was brought in to the sergeant's office. Door was closed. The other sergeant was over in the room, kind of in the back, because you kind of want to have that extra person.
Hmm.
And then I had my sergeant bring me in and began to, ask me
Yeah.
questions around a particular incident, date and time, what happened, all these kinds of things. And I think he was, and it wasn't part of our process really that we have now. So I didn't receive any documentation early telling me what we would do. I think he was trying to see if I was going to be investigated
Uh huh.
further
Uh huh.
or if it was really going to be a citizen's complaint process. And so he went through all these questions with me. And at the end, he goes, "Well, I'm sure glad you told the truth." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? Why wouldn't I tell the truth?" He goes, "Because there was video." And I was like, "Okay."
Okay.
And he goes, but what I didn't know is there was no audio to the video. You could only see us standing at the register and maybe some hand movements
Yeah.
that we were there. And I just thought it was done in such a way to me feel like all the work that I'd been doing as an
Yeah.
officer to do my job didn't really matter until this thing came up. And now that's the thing that mattered. Like you were trying to take me down for this thing, and I
Yeah.
just really didn't feel appreciated.
Of
I
course.
was really working hard to fit in, doing my job in a rural area in Stockton where crashes and fatals and pursuits and assisting our allied agencies because literally we're in this big rural area out in Stockton, and I get called in for this stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get any kind of like, support like after he got what he needed from me because now he's going to pursue her because hers was part of progressive discipline.
Hmm.
Mine was a one time, this is the first time Johnny's name has come up in anything in her
Right.
7 years. She had a line of crap. So this was what they were going to be doing internal investigation further on this person. And I would say after I came out of that and I was walking down the hallway, one of the senior officers, back then our senior officers had literally white hair. They looked like, Santa Clauses. They were much older. I think we age differently now. But he caught me in the hallway and he said, "How'd it go?" And I said, "Well," he said, "I told the truth. So I feel pretty good." He goes,
Yeah.
"You just want to stay away from certain people." And so he gave me like a little bit of a boost that I fit in because again, I had to work hard. A lot of male officers didn't come to my calls right away. I
Yeah.
would be handling stuff by myself. They didn't want to ride with you as partners.
Mm.
This older officer gave me that little brief glimpse that he saw me and it's going to be okay, but you need to navigate stuff a little carefully on who you hang out with and that the sergeants aren't really out to get you. They really were trying to say they're out to get her, but he couldn't really say that. And
Right.
so that was my first experience, but it left me like I, I had a potty mouth back then. I don't have one necessarily as I matured, but I was like really bitter. Like, do I go to another agency? Do I stay here? What do I
Yeah.
do? But, I'd already had, my first child, and my husband was in the local Stockton PD. And I was like, this is supposed to be a career. But
Yeah.
I was disenfranchised for quite a bit after that experience.
To touch on that, because you did bring up the female officer back then, and I wanted to ask you about that. But before I do, 6, 7 years you were on. Who do you think is accountable for not letting you know about the IA process early in your career? In other words, do you think it's a little bit of a disservice that we do into ourselves by not informing you about how this process is?
Well, think about that. You just said that out loud. So doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I'm learning about the department and I'm onboarding, and there's all these things that I'm to learn and to know, and I have this field training period, they tell you to stay out of trouble, but they don't really tell you about the process if
Yeah.
you do get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
What your rights could be. We talk about POBAR, right? That's very brief, whatever that is. Your
Yeah.
unions and all that stuff try to reinforce your understanding, but you don't understand until you need it
Yeah.
or you have to use it. And so there could be a better space for arming or equipping.
Mm-hmm.
I would say arming because I don't want it to be like we're weaponizing information,
Correct.
but equipping our officers or our line level classifications, period,
Yeah.
with information to help them better navigate things that will come up in their careers. So
Yeah.
they know things they shouldn't do, but what will happen if they do it, right? We only hear about it, but if it never really happens to us, we don't know what to draw from. So,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely a space to better educate and equip our employees with knowledge.
Yeah, no, I just feel like we're just not informed. It's just not a topic that people think about. Hey, you know what? Maybe we should tell these young officers that perhaps if, number one, let's kind of define what misconduct is and let them know, what their process, kind of hold them by the hand and say, hey, look, this happens when you do this. This happens when you don't do this, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Going back, you mentioned 6, 7 years, so you're in your early 90s. Uh, Women had to work twice as hard. I'm sure we can agree with that.
I'm going to say, yeah, for a lot of factors. I mean, as we know, for one, women, I mean, I wasn't prior military. I hadn't
Right.
in that background. So some
Totally.
women might have a different perspective. But there's research that does support that, we do have to work harder. We're trying to fit in a male dominant culture. Some don't want you there. Some don't know if they want you there or not because they don't know what it's
Exactly.
going to be like.
Yes.
But they
Yeah.
want to know that you can do your job
Yeah.
and they don't have to do their job and your job.
Yeah. No, totally. I was going to say it's a male dominant profession. And what I wanted to ask you is that was, the challenges you faced and some obstacles at the time compared to when you left in 2017. Did things get better in terms of trying to prove just because you're a female officer?
I would say they shifted
Okay.
because when I move into leadership, there's less of me everywhere I look.
Mm,
I mean, nationally, 12 to 13% women in law enforcement. And you go to particular agencies, that shifts quite considerably. So I think Highway Patrol has less than 7% women or
wow.
7%, maybe now, I don't know. And then you move into leadership roles, it becomes maybe less than 3%
Wow.
in some places. And then you move into executive leadership and you can be less than 1%. So I think most of the time for me, I wasn't seeing myself as a woman or a woman of color in those spaces. It
Right.
was just more me feeling confident in the spaces I was in to speak what I wanted to speak because my lens is different,
Right.
period. So my perspectives and my ideas didn't necessarily always align with those
Hmm.
sitting in the room. And so I would say things that were, in opposition to
Yeah.
what 4 or 5 people were sitting around the table and
Yeah.
just really cheering each other on this thing, and I just kinda chime in and say
Yeah.
something that wasn't what they were saying,
Yeah.
and it was like an E.F. Hutton moment. So
Yeah.
most people in your age population may not remember the E.F.
They don't
Hutton.
know if I know. Yes, they don't, but we do.
The fight when the financial advisor, when they speak, you're gonna listen,
Listen.
right? A pin could drop. And so I would say it shifted in that way, that getting
Yeah.
male perspectives to hear you, not necessarily respect you, but
Hmm.
to hear you and give validity and credibility to what you have to
Hmm.
offer. And to me, that took me building relationships, building trust, proven track record, my reputation, the kind of way that I work. And I think all of that just lended, and we all kind of have to do that.
Hmm.
I just think when we look different and we are different, it takes a little bit extra for people to kind of lean in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of that background work that's very similar that we all have to do.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I like to think that my beloved LAPD, which is true, I will say that back in 1998 when I came on, uh, female officers were a very low percentage. I felt as though that I can say this with with a lot of confidence that uh, there is that double way of proving yourself. In other words, if you're working hard, I got to work twice as hard to prove myself. However, I retired 2 years ago, and I can say that that kind of has gotten better, where it's more acceptable. I guess that's the term I'm looking for, where there is not much field training officers that are sexist, like, oh my God, I can't believe a woman's doing this job, et cetera, et cetera. But we keep forgetting that when you do arrive to a investigation that involves children, that involves sexual assault, rape, those very sensitive type of initial investigations, a lot of times the victim happens to be a female, and you know what? They rather speak to a female than a male. And I think that's where there is an advantage, and it should be welcomed. And I can say that in 2024, it's way different than it was in 1988, early 90s, and certainly in late 90s, where
But
when I was on the job.
we also have to move away from that being like the regular practice. Men should also be, trained enough to have emotional intelligence so that they have that empathy, that people can pick up on that and they're
Yeah,
just as comfortable with them as they are with
yeah,
women. Versus I may be a woman, but I may not be empathetic at all. I may not have that thing that you think that I do just because
right.
of my gender. And there's women who they understand that role, but they
Yeah,
also are offended by the fact that they can be siloed into those roles.
yeah.
So
No, good
we in
point.
organizations have to, in our leadership, have to, recognize that we keep pigeonholing women into certain things.
Yeah.
But depending on individual women, they have very different experiences.
Hmm.
But overall, I'd say policing culture has shifted
Hmm.
significantly from when I came on the 88. That you cannot talk to me any kind of certain way, you cannot treat me any kind of certain
Yeah,
way without there being a consequence. Today, when I came on, there was no
yeah,
consequence. They can call me a B word, they can call me all kind of stuff, and
yeah,
the sergeant would just keep on doing briefing like he didn't hear what was happening
yeah,
or whatever. But today you can't have
yeah.
that.
No, that's
And today you have leadership that's trying to shape, positive organizational culture to support everyone equitably, not just specifically.
yeah. Let's talk about that leadership when it relates to discipline. When you were in this executive position as an assistant chief, can you kind of tell us what challenges you face when it came to adjudicating an internal affairs complaint, if any?
Um, Yeah, so for me, we have a lot of processes, right? We have an internal investigations whole section led by a whole, captain, a whole group of people reports directly to the commissioner. And then we have our divisions and we have support staff and folks that do internal investigations. And then we have over 100 commands in the California Highway Patrol. And so as an assistant chief, I had several commands, which means several personnel, which
Hmm.
layers of leadership. And so the challenges that I found were generally in the leadership, the training of those who are going to be investigating the investigations, and then the leadership kind of oversight over that. not quite understanding their roles.
Hmm.
And so we have really defined policy, and policy has been updated, 10 years ago to
Hmm.
include some additional things to really help them to know the scope and magnitude of what they're working on.
Hmm.
And so, one of the things we did that was helpful is when we had a significant internal investigation or misconduct case, we didn't just give it to, the command or whatever's right above. We did a regional approach, and we would regionalize the people that would be involved in the investigation. So it would remove them from having too much of a personal connection
There
to
you go.
them, but it would also allow for them to be maybe unbiased,
Yeah.
for us to have a more fair and procedurally just process for that particular employee. And for me, it became about coaching my leadership on how to oversee
Yeah.
their misconduct case, because ultimately it's mine, right?
Yes.
Mine is the chief, and it's going to go forward. But for my commanders, who it was happening in their command, it was their, they're going to be a part of this. It was coaching them on that process so that they could be effective. And one of the things that I still believe is very much missing, and it was very much missed during my time, is people centric leadership, part of how we do our investigations. Like if you look in policy, it's going to give you everything on collecting evidence, how to gather the
Yes.
statements, bar, blah, 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 blah. But we don't talk about that human side of the experience. It's really like making sure technically we get everything done and captured
Yeah.
so that we have a really good investigation in a case, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have that people centric approach, which humanizes the experience so that we take care of people in the process. I mean, people are going to, you know, have misconduct, they're going to make mistakes. And
It.
then some stuff is really egregious, right?
Yes.
But we still need to treat people with dignity and respect. And it needs to be like almost to me centered to the training that we give
Yeah.
investigators. But we don't do that.
No, we don't. And I know you're speaking from experience, and this goes with all. I have had almost 100+ guests. Well, I've had 100+ that share the same sentiment. That I'll quote unquote will tell you is, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me that the punishment at time punishment is not really the penalty. The punishment happens to be the process. And so, as executives, if you will, aren't we responsible to try to make this process? I don't know what word I'm looking for. Smoother or better, well informed, transparent.
Uh, it should. I love the idea of a human experience because I do a lot of research in a lot of different places, and I'm always doing qualitative interviews. I even did that for my dissertation, and um, women and employees are and male employees, they come together in this very common space
Uh huh.
of wanting human leadership. I mean, it's just that simple. Where people have this level of empathy, where they can walk in your shoes, where they can understand what the
Yeah.
experience is like, and they often will say, "We just don't want them to forget where they came from." And it's almost like when you move in up in leadership, you do kind of forget where you came from
Yeah.
because all of a sudden you're very judgmental.
Yeah.
You're, and you need to be non-judgmental. You need to remember what this feels like. Yes, we have a job to do to get to the bottom, to get to the bottom line. What happened? What's going to go on? But in that process, we don't have to treat people like crap to do that. You just
Yeah.
don't, and we forget that. Um, and that's a space where I think we need to do better
Yeah.
at.
No. What you said it best. I really appreciate all that. And what really stands out the most at having all these conversations with all my guests is this transparency. Oh my God, we preach it so much, and we do a good job. I don't want to water it down that we don't do a good job in transparency, but whatever happened to transparency amongst ourselves? We're very good with the public. We've gotten better, but not within ourselves. And then the other thing that kind of sticks out the most to me is this It's almost like hypocrisy is. I mean, it's way up there in our profession. You right?
Well, it's hard for leaders to say they're wrong. It's hard
Yeah,
for people in leadership positions to say they got it wrong, they are wrong, we
yeah,
made mistakes. Um, and then it gets very cumbersome and complicated
hmm
when you add legal people. Like,
yeah,
I remember sitting in rooms with the commissioner's chief, legal teams, and other stakeholders like employee relations or whatever, and we're talking about cases,
hmm
and you're looking at past, and you're looking at practices and patterns of practice, and seeing what this employee's done in their whole career, what are other comparable cases, what is legal casework say, and you're looking at all of these things, and you get an opportunity. I forgot, I wanted to mention that we know that employees get an opportunity to have a response to their
hmm
adverse action through a skelly hearing or their
correct.
pre-disciplinary hearing officer. And the challenge with that is those often, as a skelly officer myself, I may recommend a lesser penalty, but I am not the final say so
Correct.
on that lesser penalty. And so it gets very complicated because now
Yeah.
we're back at the table with
Yes.
all those stakeholders saying what the risk is or what the potential
Yeah.
for it as it goes to SPB, the State Personnel Board, right?
Okay.
Versus what do we need to do in agency that we have the control influence to
Yeah.
do, to be able to change the outcome if we need to, even though it's been brought to us with this penalty.
Yeah.
Does it warrant that penalty? And I would have to say, for the California Highway Patrol, we did a lot of that. We did a lot of that back and forth, and we'd send things back with a reduction in penalty. We'd send things back with an increase in penalty
Yeah.
if necessary. And things that were a dismissal or a termination, those were highly scrutinized, um, to make sure that not only technically, but was the right approach being taken. Some are egregious; they're going to be criminal
Oh
charges.
no. One. Yeah.
You got to do those, but other ones. We really sat at that table, and it was an eye opener for me. But I didn't get to do that till I was assistant chief. Prior to
Right.
that, I didn't know what was talked about, even as a commander
Right.
at higher levels. But when I got there and I saw that this is part of the process, that should be okay to be transparent about those processes. Those don't have to be secret. I can't necessarily share the conversations that we're having,
Correct.
but to understand that those things are taking place. Now, I just want to add this because I feel like some commanders and some people who have that span of control over the investigation,
hmm
I think our employees get those mixed up with what the department is doing, because you'll get people that it's like their control, their thing, they're going to run with this thing, and they're treating people however they're treating them, but that's not necessarily how your upper management would
hmm
want you to be treating your people.
hmm
So you have individuals who are, sole actors in some of these things.
Yeah. I always say that somewhere in the levels of review, unfortunately, and again, it doesn't happen all the time. It gets personal. It's a little bit self-serving,
Yeah, yeah.
and you know what? Good for you. I'm glad that. And again, I just want to emphasize that we're really talking about a really small fraction of the population when it comes to disciplinary issues. I mean, amongst
Very small,
thousands. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
very small.
Exactly. Let's not reinvent the wheel, but for whatever reason, it gets sensationalized. It sticks out, like a sore thumb, if you will. But we need to improve, and I really appreciate you sharing all this, Jonni. Let me move on to this worst incident in your career.
You and I chatted about this.
We did.
We did. We chatted about this a little bit, and there's been, unfortunately, in a 29-year career, there's been too many
hmm
to like really even, and we carry this trauma with us. So you try to kind of compartmentalize and move on and shut the door on some things in some ways. But I had a recent connection on my Facebook, maybe, or I can't remember if it was I think it was my Facebook.
hmm
Um, and she was the niece of one of my officers. when I was a captain, and he was murdered, shot and killed in the line of duty, early
Mm.
morning hours after a holiday weekend. And it took everybody, it shocked everybody because he was shot and killed on the side of the freeway. And he had a beat partner with him who they were actually going to be chasing speed, but they pulled this particular vehicle over for something different. And he pulled up as he was approaching the vehicle, but as he got out and was approaching the car, the other officer was already on the driver's side being shot. And he
Mm.
returned fire and killed the suspect in that stop. And all the things that can happen after that happen, as we know, with line of duty deaths. And it was just very overwhelming. And I was thinking about because you use the worst. There's hard things that we have in this career and job.
Yeah.
That was the absolute worst because I'd had line of duty deaths of friends, of colleagues,
Yeah.
and as an assistant chief, way too many that my commanders would experience. But this was mine as a commander.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult when I look back on it. It was really difficult because I wasn't allowing myself to have a human experience. And I
Right.
keep using that word because I was supposed to be commanding. I had tears and I would cry here or there, but I didn't allow myself to really feel the complete grieving process
Yeah.
that I needed to till probably about a year later.
Wow.
And it's one of the lessons that I teach forward to leadership
Mhm.
about self care for yourself
Mhm.
because we preach it to our people, but we don't do it for ourselves.
Mhm.
And out of that worst experience ever, we changed a few protocols to help our first line supervisors, our managers, and our commanders to be able to get the healing that they need because you do that immediate critical incident debrief
Yeah.
and everybody's included but people of rank people who have any kind of it's generally all of your folks, public safety, first responders, it's for the officers and you do for the wives, and you have these kind of different sessions. But my supervisors didn't get everything that they needed. My lieutenants didn't get everything they needed. And all my peer commanders and their staff that responded
Mhm.
to our scene, because again, we're one command in a division of many commands, um, didn't get the support they needed. And so we changed that. We had peer support
That's awesome.
for all of us, a critical incident debrief with a clinician for all of us at different levels and as a command staff. But yeah, that was the worst
Yeah.
experience of losing
Yeah.
him.
Losing any incident where you have someone that dies in the line of duty is definitely got to be horrific, tragic, and definitely the worst. So I really thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to something good. Talk to me about this book and what are we doing? You've been retired for 7 years, so I know you're
Mhm.
just not home and without doing nothing because I'm sure you're in popular demand. Talk to me about the book and what else are we doing there, Doctor?
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. So after I retired, I definitely felt like I was still a little too young to just kind of go be on a beach with a little umbrella in my drink all the time. So I decided after I finished my master's degree, they offered me to be faculty for the University of San Diego. So I teach in their law enforcement and public safety leadership course, which I really like because it's practitioner based for people looking for their graduate degrees. And we teach people from all over the country.
That's
And it's
awesome.
absolutely wonderful. And we work in line with a command college here in California. So it's nice people can get additional, credits or units towards their bachelor's and towards their master's degree,
That's
actually.
awesome.
So it worked out wonderfully. And in that same process, as I was doing that, I had a book in me for 2 decades, like many of us do, right? We want to write our book, we want to tell our story. And a young woman reached out to me to interview me for her dissertation. And as we did the interview, she was very inspired by my story in
Mhm.
the sense that she sent me something. that inspired me
Mm.
to get off my butt and actually execute it because I had compiled a lot. And so I did. So I wrote my book, Black, White, and Blue Surviving the Sifting. And it is my personal memoir around the fact that I am half Black, half white, and I was blue for 29 years. And um, it's really about all of me. I was approached and, do it just on leadership, just to and no, that wasn't what was in my spirit. There's a lot of those leadership books out there. This
Mhm.
was about a story that would resonate with people, uh, men, women, policemen, just people in general, about the experience of just trying to survive, navigating and seeing that things are possible, and hopefully giving people hope through my story of vulnerability. Because I had a young woman approach me at a conference I was speaking at, and she goes, when I walked in the room and I saw you up there, I was like, man, this lady's got it all together. She's probably never had a problem in a day in her life. And she reached out later after she read the book and she goes, I was just crying because I had no idea. And
Mm.
you just give me so much hope and so much inspiration because we all have those things,
You're
but we
right.
don't think that we can do it or that it matters or other people
Mhm.
care. And so that's why I wrote it, because I am a woman of faith
Mhm.
and I feel like I have a purpose driven mission. And so I wanted to stay on mission with writing something that was authentically me. And so that's what I did. Outside of that, I speak on the book, I speak on leadership, I consult in different places. And one of the things that my husband and I are going to be doing and launching 2025 is we're starting a nonprofit. And it's called the Leadership Hub Training Institute, and we want to be able to provide workforce development and training. It's to everyone, but we really want to focus on underserved populations that just don't have access on how to even enter the workforce. To once you get in the workforce, how to
Right.
navigate your career, how to skill up, how to network. People don't have mentorship. They don't have
Yeah.
people championing them. So we want to be a resource to do that. So we're really excited. That's our next venture.
That's
And
awesome.
so we're really excited about that.
Wow. Love it. Look,
Thank
we're
you.
about to wrap it up, so I'm going to leave the floor up to you. And any advice you have for anyone that wants to come on and be a law enforcement officer?
Absolutely. I think, we've heard the word noble profession, absolutely, but what does noble profession mean? So, for people listening, when you think about what do you want to do in a career that will provide job satisfaction and security, it'll provide this opportunity for you to really be trained in so many areas you hadn't thought about. That's the thing I want to tell people actually who are listening to you, who are new officers or young officers.
Hmm.
Explore your training opportunities in the agency, not just the required mandatory stuff, but how can you further develop yourself? Because the department usually has incentives to be able to help you to get outsourced training, to do different things, whether you want to be investigative in some specialized position or other things. Get your training while you're in the department. It's similar to military, but we don't take advantage of it like military people do, and we
Yeah.
should because it is available to us.
Hmm.
But a career in law enforcement to me is providing me everything I'm doing in my second career.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at jobs that are out there, not many provide that for you. Absolutely, you got to have a heart for service. You got to have a certain mindset and aptitude to do the work. But it does start with you and the mindset. You can't constantly be expecting the department to give you everything you need.
Yes.
You also have to come in and contribute to it, and you have to be all in.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm glad we were able to connect and have this conversation that was needed. And we will see you soon. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marlon, and the
Yeah.
very best to you. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate.
Of course. And like always, please be safe out there and don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.